And hopefully we'll get some other
And
participants.
as of right now, no, we have none.
Hi, Dave.
Morning, very good afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
So, I will do the roll call, but I'm assuming that we might have a few people who are locked out. Locked out, yeah, that's right. So I have Steve. Here, I have Clark.
Yeah.
I have Susan.
Here.
Okay. And technically, we can go ahead. Although we might have to catch some people up. So do we have minutes from the last?
They were emailed.
They were emailed. Okay, I do not. Well, hello,
Hello.
and we have Carrie.
I don't know. I know I didn't have to read them, so.
I have not looked at
I
that.
think this is
Okay,
because
so
I read.
is that a motion? Oh, do you want to? Okay, please do.
Motion to accept the minutes from last month?
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, yes, even though you haven't read.
Well, I looked at them.
Oh,
Oh, are you okay?
So that was.
He wasn't here. He wasn't here, so. he got-
Opposed? I guess we passed them. Okay,
Yes.
now. I left your, Clark, I left your goals in here.
Okay.
Would you like me to read them or are we?
Yeah, I think so, just
Okay.
as a
All
monthly
right. So
reminder.
this is a reminder of what our mission was. Well, I shouldn't say our mission, our goal for this year. Okay, first, use safety as our guiding principle and propose recommendations that are unbiased, transparent, and administered fairly. B, develop complete streets policies specific to Webster Groves and present them to the city council for approval. Hopefully we'll talk about that at this meeting. C, develop a written plan for the Traffic Advisory Commission process for evaluating citizen requests. And D, prepare a document of uniform criteria for parking restrictions. Okay. Next item, invite attending citizens. Dave, that's right?
Yep.
You're on.
Can I sit down?
I don't think it'll hurt, sure.
I was just taking my
Stand at attention.
afternoon
And
walk.
And I need to remind you again that you have 3 minutes, give or
I
take.
know, but really quick.
Okay,
I know that this board or commission is working on some really big stuff, which is fantastic. I live on South Elm and I know that's a big element of it. But these are 3 low-hanging fruits I just wanted to share.
okay,
First one is I wanted to thank the police department, Greg and Eric Peterson and Todd Ray, because we held our 4th annual Porch Fest, Carrie, as you know, one of your bands at your house, on October the 1st, on a Sunday. On the Friday morning before, a neighbor on Central, Mike Albers, called me and said, you know, if people park on both sides of Central, I don't think an emergency vehicle can get through. So I contacted Eric and said, you know, can we put through a request for no parking signs on one side of Central? Porch Fest is not a city endorsed event. We don't submit a special activities permit that's signed off. But despite that, on a Friday noon, Eric made an exception. And he talked, I think he talked to the police department, he talked to Todd. The no parking signs went up Friday morning, Porch Fest went on without a hitch, and I just want to say thank you because I agree that with policies and procedures, but this was one where there wasn't one and you made an exception and I really appreciate it. Second, I've been interested in speed humps. I was over at Kinko's today, so I drove down Pine in Brentwood, talked to a couple of the residents. I said, do these things really work? And they said, no, they don't work. They don't slow down traffic. They said, in fact, SUVs go right through it. But I said, well, how do you control traffic? And he said, and interestingly, he said, Brentwood evidently has the highest police officer to resident ratio of any of the neighboring cities. And he said, there's just a lot of police visibility and presence. They drive around and that seems to control traffic. I then stopped by the Brownwood Police Station just to get their point of view, talk to an officer, and he said the exact same thing. He said the speed humps don't work at all. And he said they weren't even our idea. They said they came from City Hall. So for whatever it's worth, there may be better ways than speed humps. And it's one data point. The last thing I wanted to say is that I think there's an opportunity to improve pedestrian crossing signs, particularly the yellow blinking lights. And what I found interesting driving down South Elm today toward Watson, at Old Watson Road, which is the last stoplight, the stop sign there has red blinking lights around it. I've never seen that anywhere in Webster. But it was, they're not yellow lights, they're red lights, and they're blinking constantly. And I'm telling you, as just a driver, I thought they were very, very effective. And so, in my mind, for the pedestrian crossing, even at Lockwood and Gray, rather than yellow blinking lights, put on red blinking lights. I mean, red means stop. And I just think it's a better color. It's much more visible. When it's bright and sunny outside, you cannot see those yellow blinking lights when somebody presses the button. And so that's it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Yes,
You too.
okay. Next thing I have on the agenda, we're down to old business. So I looked back. First of all, I should say that I looked at the video of last month's meeting. And obviously you had a lot, you guys covered a lot. I went back and looked at the last time the action item list was updated was in June. We had a couple of unusual meetings and then I was out of town. So I have fallen down on keeping this current. So I would like quickly tonight to just go over the items and see where we stand on those, okay? So the first one, traffic quieting on North Elm. The latest action item reads, Traffic Advisory Commission members will delay further effort on traffic quieting at this time. I believe the reason we did that was because of complete streets.
No, because the city manager came back and said, based on staff's recommendations, that she wasn't recommending we go
North
forward.
North Elm.
Correct, but we decided, let's
Yes.
put a pause on it,
Okay,
but not, table it, but just put a pause on it.
so given where we are today, do we want to change or add to this?
I think we can still pause on it, but one thing I'll point out is the letter you got from the administrator talks about, city administrator, that they're going to be restriping South Elm to basically take some of that street width and turn it into a, multi-use path or something on one side. So, and that's imminent,
So
so,
this is North Elm.
yeah, I know, I was just
Okay,
gonna say,
okay,
my thought is, once that happens, that we see how it works and we turn around and say, can we apply that same idea to North?
Great. Got it. So do you want me to capture
I was
that?
just gonna say, maybe we pause it until the
Okay.
South Elm gets constructed.
Pause.
Does anyone, do you know, I know it was soon, imminent, yeah,
It's funded, sounds like.
funded, yeah, okay,
Changes in the works.
yeah. So it might not be till after winter, but
Okay, good. This item 2 or issue 2, a more consistent policy for has been requested for for sharing on-street parking. We all know what that is. Do I need to, let's see, the last comment was no update on the status. Well, of course, now we do have a
I
approved.
think you should just recapture probably the current status.
Yeah, okay, update status. Okay, good. The next one is number 5. And this is complete streets. Do you have any update on that or?
I think the only thing I would update is Chris and I met with David earlier in the week, David Franklin. And we all talked about the need for more education. And my thought was that TrailNet or someone else can give city council really just what is complete streets? An educational session for them to hear, because I think a lot of times how much is it gonna cost? What is it this? And I think an overview to really get them more comfortable with the concept. David then said, maybe we make it not only just city council, but we make it open to the public
Yeah,
for comments, and I would be totally for that.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I think it's a-
TrailNet, I think is a good
And I think
vendor.
TrailNet would be great to just give an
Why not?
overview, so
right.
I guess if we think that's a good idea, I can work with David in getting that on the calendar.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of that, and I think everybody here. Captain Perks, any thoughts about how best to make that happen? How do we, whose approval do we have to get, or?
Yours, just to get TrailNet in here to speak or?
Well, but to speak to the public.
To do a meeting that the city council and then would be open to the public.
I should think the city council would want to authorize that. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, David Franklin.
Hmm?
Yeah, talk to David Franklin about it.
So I
Yeah,
think-
I mean, we'd start with David Franklin and
Okay.
then start with that. I mean, if you're gonna do an entire forum that would be for the public, that
Yeah.
would start with David Franklin.
Right.
And then, because I think you would want to get, is Complete Streets, is that not through sustainability as well? Is that?
Yeah,
And then, because you'd want to tie them in as well.
exactly.
But-
And then since David was for this, I think I need to circle back to him and say, hey, we met, I don't, maybe is he on now?
No.
That we met in our meeting, we
Right,
want to move forward with this, how can you help me make this happen?
okay,
Because you'd have to lock down a place
Yeah.
that would be large enough to do that, and then,
right.
probably have some kind of virtual aspect of it as well, and.
We could turn it into a little fair. We could get,
Make popcorn.
yeah,
All right, so that's on my.
Bring in a,
Make that
you know,
happen.
While we're on the subject of sustainability, do you happen to know, Clark, if our joint subcommittee still stands?
I don't.
Okay.
I asked, when I asked, they hadn't elected a chair yet,
That's what I had last heard.
but there is now a part-time staff person. And so we talked with David also
Yeah.
about, are they up to speed?
and frankly, in light of this change in organization, their priorities may change dramatically. So in some ways, we might end up taking this on
Mm.
from our commission. If it's not a priority for them, you know what I'm saying?
And it seemed to be though, I mean,
It
there were
does, I
some
think
real
it
strong
should.
members.
Yeah.
That were, so.
But this would be a great way to start with David, and then perhaps the city manager, what might endorse that. And then we would figure out how best to organize it. Again, we seem to be taking on things that are outside our traditional scope lately, but so be it.
Right.
Okay,
Well, I will take that on.
all right. Number 6, need for traffic calming on South Elm. So now is this essentially approved and in process now?
I think we sent the memo up the chain and we haven't heard anything back.
So the only thing having to do with South Elm is this change in the striping. Is that,
Yeah, I think that was the suggestion that we had made. It was supposed to be or an interim kind of fix.
And then last
I
month,
think so.
Oh,
We're talking about south.
Well-
south,
Down to Watson. That's where the striping is.
South
Right.
Elm, Lockwood to Big Bend. is
yeah,
this.
oh, so,
Nothing's happened.
yeah, no, we wrote that, we did the
Okay.
memorandum and we haven't heard.
So
anything
we're
back.
waiting to hear. And who would we check on that?
I can follow up on that one, because that one was sent up, and
Okay,
While you're talking to, whoever was talking to David Franklin, maybe that would,
So Ann's emails, the emails were the Ann's.
yeah,
So that is, she has something
She
of
did.
that charge.
and
right,
yeah,
I saw that.
so last month, they sort of added a couple of things, we had sent that up.
Well, there was a lot of discussion about this at the last meeting, and I was gonna hold off about that and try to answer, I think, your question, which was, do we do this piecemeal or do we have a bigger vision? And I think we need to decide that in order to know where to go from here.
I agree.
Okay, but so
Yeah, I think we had done what was supposed to be just a piecemeal or an interim idea.
that's what this was.
Mhm.
Okay,
And we had shied away from things like pedestrian crossings and things like that, but
okay. So what do you suggest? Should we add this new stuff to this scope or should we write a new action item to pursue those changes?
so I think we talked about this last meeting. The reason we did the whole interim memorandum idea was because we were waiting on traffic counts.
Traffic
Do you know if those are in the works? So that would be our first step to doing something bigger.
Here,
Yes.
okay,
So because we had started that and it was winter and we couldn't collect data, we thought,
Correct.
what can we propose in the meantime to show residents we're trying? So I would say, I don't know what everybody else thinks. Maybe we see if we can get data and then
okay.
step back and create a new concept.
So one of the things that I heard, again, listening to the video from the last meeting was this issue of counts. And it's been an ongoing meeting or issue for a couple of meetings now. Is anything resolved in that?
Not yet. I did follow up with my traffic sergeant and we are trying to pull the data out from the massive, it is, my God.
Big data.
It is charts of numbers and we're trying to pull out the data that we can get, that we can actually understand of what it means.
What it means.
Right, so I'll follow up with him again because he sent me the. And I looked at it and my head spun and I go, what does this even mean? And he goes, you tell me. And so yes, I looked at it and I go, how is this useful?
Is it from a side radar counter or is it from something
It's
else?
from the radar, from the pole mounted radar counter.
Mhm.
And it's data that we can't even, we're looking at, and I sent it to the chief and he goes, what is this? And I go, the same thing I'm asking.
Do you want just to meet with me and we can go over it?
Yeah, possibly. Do we have tubes that we can put back out?
Yes, we do have two, but they are beat up. pretty
Right.
bad. Yeah, so I know, so we do have stuff we could do, this is again, I can meet with Jason and get you going on.
Okay.
Okay, so as an action item, you'll take it on, I don't know who that was, meeting with David.
Oh, so I'll meet with the traffic surgeon,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'll reach out to the traffic surgeon and see what's going on.
Did us real well to get a fancy dancy pole mounted radar unit that we can't pull any of the data out of.
Yeah.
And so I'd suggest we have a plan because it's could be winter again, so November comes and we don't have any data.
Yeah, right back where we started.
Mhm.
You can put the trailer back out?
On Elm, it's very difficult.
Yeah,
There's just not a place to put it, that's the
yeah,
problem.
but that would do a sidewalk or something like that.
And unfortunately, the radar trailer, it gives us data, but it's not true data because as soon as people see the radar trailer, what do?
Yeah, they stop.
Slow down.
They hit the brakes.
Fudged, yeah.
Okay,
So
so,
do a plan without data, or just put it off another year. If in November we still don't have data.
well, so the question was traffic calming, and I think that the approach that we talked about many months ago was narrowing the streets with striping. Was there more to it than that?
I think that was
Carrie?
it, because I think we had shied away from some things like pedestrian crossings and,
Okay,
pedestrian
Yeah,
signals or anything like
I
that.
couldn't remember if the light,
Or,
if we
yeah,
had talked about that being a flashing red light.
oh, you can't do a flashing red light on a pedestrian. I didn't want to tell Dave about
That's a
that, but you
no-no.
can't. Yeah.
I didn't want to say that either.
I was-
No, I meant the
I was
light,
biting my
traffic
tongue.
signal,
Oh,
you know how when it.
that
when
was
it-
the reason that we really needed the data.
Right, because when
Right.
it breaks and it's flashing, it calms traffic.
Right, so to be able to justify the removal of a signal, these, like, data's the step one.
Right.
all right.
So, but
Okay.
I do think we could talk about additional traffic calming
Well,
and send that up,
and I think we should, but let's kind of catch up here and then,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about it in more detail. I'm almost done.
No, that's fine. I know we keep getting you off the topic, so.
Well, and I keep dragging myself back. so-
Back to June, it's hard to remember.
You're not kidding. Number 8, resident requested restricted parking on Newport And we said, Traffic Advisory Commission will table this issue until city council has ruled on complete streets,
Oh,
okay? So that's,
remember that? Do you?
Remember that.
Okay,
Because I
good for
drive
you.
on the
So are we-
airport all the time.
should we leave that as it is? Or, because
Read
now.
that one more time, there was. what was
Okay,
the-
so, a resident requested restricted parking on Newport.
So not.
Oh, not,
complete
sorry,
streets.
not complete streets.
no parking.
The park, I apologize, it was the parking issue,
So-
so we know where that is.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm inclined to say, we're just gonna wait until we get that resolved.
Hopefully
Okay.
we'll know soon.
Last one is 9. A resident has requested lower speed limit on Kirkham north of Elm. And that's the one we were waiting on counts and speeds.
Same issue.
Same
We
issue.
use the same equipment.
Same
for that,
equipment.
and
Okay,
That's where, because it goes from 35 or 30 to,
30, and it drops up to 5 miles per hour.
right, it goes 35 to 30 to 25.
okay, so that is the same response as the county, okay. Speed and county. Okay. Thank you for your patience, because I just wanted to catch up on this.
And the only other one that isn't on there that we might want to add as an action item was our third goal. We don't really have a process when
For when people come forward.
not visitors,
No, not
but
that.
when like someone submits a request,
Okay,
like the people the people on North Elm
yeah,
that ask for, that to be
Right.
found.
right.
We don't really have a process of getting back to them.
Well, we certainly don't have one in writing. And I support the idea that we need to do that. Because it would be nice, then we could hand it to people who are interested in
It's
it.
almost like those kinds of requests shouldn't be on our action. They should almost be on a spreadsheet of requests that come in to us from citizens. And is it resolved by an ordinance or by existing?
Yeah, how do we do it?
And how we circle back to them.
Okay, does anyone in their spare time want to draft a first, first draft?
I'll give it a try.
Do you think it might just be a spreadsheet? That we capture it and then it says, and then we can, when we go over that maybe in the meeting, we say, hey, if we're solved this, who's gonna call them?
Well, I have another thought on that. I don't.
No, and I'm fine.
Spreadsheet's fine. What I would like to see is a flow diagram. Decision one is this pertinent or is this, does it fall under our purview? And then you branch to, okay, yes, it does. So I'd like to kind of see that as a roadmap. I think it would be helpful for us and for people who are approaching us.
I do
That-
think, I think we need to have something just to get back to someone,
Right.
Yeah,
just a thank you for contacting us.
oh, that's a good idea.
Is a start.
Okay,
And then how do we handle the difference between people who come to us directly, things that filter through, let's say the mayor, someone contacts her, I know some
Or come to
things.
Captain Perks that we
Yeah.
never
Right.
see.
Well, vast majority of things, if it doesn't pertain to you, you'll never see it. Because it
right,
comes to
because
me
it comes
first.
to you.
And
Okay,
if it's something that we handle through ordinance, we take care of it and it never even makes it to you. But if it's something that would pertain to you, then it comes to your plate. So it wouldn't be something that you guys would ever even see if we can handle it, or if it doesn't pertain to you at all. So
what
it
about-
wouldn't be an item that if it doesn't pertain.
Like,
to
what's an
traffic-
example of some of those that you guys get all the time?
Well, I mean, we
And
get
I'm
stuff,
just wondering if there's any reason why we should.
we get
At
stuff
least
all the
do
time
that.
that whether, something, if it's a crosswalk issue, and if it's within 10 feet of a crosswalk issue, and then we have Public Works go out and measure it. And it falls within 10 feet, well, then Public Works just moves the sign. And it never comes to the Traffic Advisory Commission
Right.
because it fell under our ordinance and they just moved the sign.
took care of it in-house.
They measured it and we just took care of it in-house.
so that way, anything that comes to you you'll bring to us.
Right, if it's an issue where it's.
Right.
If it's something to do with a stop sign and we do the measurement or, we do the counts or something, that they're requesting a stop sign on a corner. And,
Okay,
okay, well, then I bring it to you and they're requesting it, that would come to you and then we'd take the measurements and do the car counts and then you would say, hey, okay, we did get it, warrant some stop sign. But
Did our due diligence.
and then say yes or no, and then we would take it up to the council at that point, and then that would come to you.
Okay, so the only thing that doesn't go that way are the people who walk in here and have a concern that they want to
No.
address.
No, because there's a lot of things they just handle that never come to us.
I know, I understand that.
Even that?
I'm saying when there is someone who comes to directly to us through that door.
But even that, Chris, if it's something that
That's a
they-
public that's
that's
not
a public comment, that's
Right.
not a problem.
Well,
That's-
but
that's comments only,
That's not
I know,
a
that's
request.
not a request.
but it seems to me there have been a few times when we've taken that input and turned it into one of these action items because we think it needs to be addressed. True?
Yeah, we have. I think we've.
Well,
done
do
that.
we still want to offer that service or are we, I mean, it seems to me that's kind of part of our job.
I would agree.
I think typically then you say the process is put it in
Oh,
writing.
Okay, so now we have the solution to that is, here's the procedure. And then the person who made that comment, it's kind of on them to follow
I mean, I
up.
think we've said that like the North Elm, they
Yeah.
came in and made a comment and you said the process is you get
Okay,
a petition or get your neighbors to fill
And then
something
that
out.
started, and it came to me.
Correct.
And then I brought that forward. to
that
them.
sounds great. Okay, good. I think we have that
Right,
understood.
and that's how it started, and then.
So Susan, if you're comfortable,
Sure.
it'd be great if you could draft something.
And I'm most concerned with how do we circle? I mean, when I brought it up, but I think all that other stuff is.
Well, the last meeting was a good example of that. I mean, you had stuff coming from every direction. And people are wondering, what's happening with this? And we didn't know. You know? So, no, that's great. Okay,
And a lot of times, Chris, we had a intersection that didn't have a yield sign up on it, and it was that, and I had Public Works go out. And
Yeah.
We looked and there wasn't a yield sign, and I just put a work order in, they put a yield sign up, and then literally the resident just emailed me, thank you, and that wasn't.
Awesome.
We were done, because
Yeah.
it was. There wasn't any circle back, didn't have to let them know, they emailed me back and said, thank you.
great.
Usually know.
Yeah, they know.
Yeah,
They know when the signs are up.
Okay, so does that resolve the concern that you had? So I've got that down as item 10. Susan will prepare a first draft and then we'll review it.
Low
Okay.
chart and spreadsheet and.
Starts the
And,
In your spare, her spare time just went like.
We'll have a response.
Why do you always sign in as a guest?
I don't know, do I not, cause I just go to the link on the website, where am I supposed to sign in?
No, but you're here.
Oh, I know, just in case we need to share the screen.
Oh.
Yeah,
oh. Okay,
I'm just being prepared so we don't have to delay.
so we talked about the railroad crossing, we talked about the railroad crossing signage, or is there more to it than that? Okay, so that one,
What is actually happening over, is it just curbs right now?
Yes. So we had a safety complaint, and so we went from roll curb to standard curb, and that's what we're doing right now. It should be back open, I think, in the next few weeks.
I'm confused. Are we still talking about the railroad thing?
Yes.
Okay, so we are taking the action because I remember from watching that video that we said nothing could be done because it's on
It's a little different, I mean, it's not the cross, this is the.
this is
Just approach.
the approach to the
approach.
crossing. Okay,
Yeah, we can't touch railroad, they usually get.
so do I need to capture that as an action item or is that pretty much in progress?
It's in progress.
Okay,
It's like we already saw cut, we already have concrete poured.
okay, geez, wow.
Fast, I know. Meanwhile, we're waiting on counts.
I got the notes again, I'm
I
following
know.
up.
I mean, it's-
I even had an arrow, I got to follow up again on the South Elm to see if we can decipher that.
Oh, that's funny.
Just-
I
Okay,
think there were
Right.
two things really with the railroad crossing, there was. And the Public Works put up signs, pedestrian signs on Cherry Street.
Right.
Yes.
yeah, but there was
which
another one.
One of them, and then the main issue was that letter was about the Rock Hill crossing. And
Okay.
how it's really a dangerous you know, and I thought the letter, and I talked to the guy several times. And he said, it's a connection, again, it's a connection thing. And how streets really should be used as connecting North Webster and Old Webster. And right
Okay.
now, you're taking your life in your hands if you cross there. Because the sidewalk ends. And
And
if
it's
you're
just-
walking there, you know, cars might not see because it's pretty steep.
So what was the resolution on that? Was that,
The resolution is it's not.
there's nothing we can do?
Right,
Right.
Buy life insurance.
Buy life insurance.
Federal Railroad property and they,
Okay,
They didn't ask for any wetlands.
so if a citizen says, I understand that there's nothing you can do, but what is my next action? What would you tell them?
you know, one of the elements of the Douglas Hill project was actually
Mhm.
a
probably a
crossing,
walkover.
a
Yeah,
walkover, which. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of that involved with going over railroads also, but that might be something the city. Would want to consider sometime. I mean, it's really not our,
Right, right. So when you say walkover, you mean,
yeah.
Up,
the
over, and
walk-
down.
Like the ones over the 44.
that's
Yeah.
a long one,
Mhm.
because you gotta get
High-
outside their property on both.
Outside their property and high enough over that it meets
Yeah.
railroad specs, to be high enough over truck.
Okay. All right,
but you got that parking
That
garage,
would-
right? You could go right from that parking
That
garage.
was the plan for SGC for the pedestrian.
You're already,
walkway.
you're already up
You're
there
already
on
up
one
there.
side.
Yeah.
and you just
Okay.
have to
Just gotta
cross.
build something on the other side to connect to.
all right, so that's not something we're gonna pursue. Okay,
I'll point out though that the he did make a point about the rolled curb, and that's a significant point. So the fact that the city's fixing that
Is-
that'll really improve safety in that,
Yeah.
on that
Right.
sidewalk segment.
And
right,
he just sent me an email last week, that he was reading the history of Webster Groves, and this was an issue like 100 years ago.
oh my
So
God.
he's laughing, he said, I hope this doesn't take a century, but.
It will.
Okay, now I'm down to number 3, which is review and edit this letter, letter to the editor. For the shared on-street parking. So I think you all saw my note. I sent out a draft. I got beat up pretty bad with it. And so I wrote another one. It was so different. I decided to just start from scratch. And so I wrote a second one and I brought a copy. But Susan, I asked her if she would be willing to be the editor in chief.
She doesn't have any spare time anymore.
Now we just took her.
We took her
No,
spare time on
Busy
the other,
doing
no.
flow charts.
We're gonna do it at this meeting, I hope.
Oh,
So. I feel good about this because I've been kind of advocating my position on this to a degree, because I'm writing the draft, right? So it's time for me to step away from this and let the whole group work on this draft. So that it comes from us and not from them.
Does this second draft include all the comments?
It includes virtually all of them.
Okay,
In a manner of, you know what I mean? I tried to build it so that it better suited the concerns that everyone expressed.
okay.
Is that okay? So I'd like to turn it over to Susan if no one
Well,
objects.
I'm looking at, I'm now tighten up the style.
Okay,
That's okay. Just a few questions that kind of stuck out to me. First paragraph, the other Webster Groves neighborhoods, does that strike anybody as?
Yeah, I didn't like that one,
Yeah,
I think just Webster Groves, you know.
yeah, cause it sounds like this
Well, I was-
neighborhood versus this neighborhood.
well, what I was trying to say, and I didn't do it very well, obviously. But what I was trying to say was that this small neighborhood close to the high school it's not just telling students they can't park there. It's essentially telling everyone they can't park there, which seems
I see.
over the top.
mhm. I'll point out too, is majority of those parking restrictions are not resident only. The majority of them are just
Yeah.
time restricted.
Restriction.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
So we might wanna
There's very few resident only.
say something like,
Well, when I drove through there, I saw a lot of resident only.
Really?
But
That-
maybe not-
Bradford,
Yeah,
I mean, I can go by and look at the sign.
I still have the map that they made us. I pull it up all the time. Let me just get it. But it's really just the area south of Lockwood,
By the parking, like sort of by those parking.
Well,
like that neighborhood by Webster.
bottom line,
Yeah,
we can rephrase this any way you all want to. I just don't want to lose the meaning.
right.
And the meaning is that this small neighborhood is essentially dictating to the rest of the city who can park there and who can't. And I struggle with
Just
that.
take resident only out. What if we just take resident only out? So it would read that current parking
Designated
restrictions.
parking.
Oh,
Yeah.
fine. Yes, okay.
Is designated.
Oh.
What do you say?
Oh, no, you had just struck resident only, and I think we could just strike that. It just says that current parking restrictions prevent students and visitors.
Perfect.
We're looking at the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, am I not looking at version 2?
Well. I think Susan, you had done some editing before you came this evening.
I did, but that minor,
Okay.
but no, I think, or anything,
Maybe I'm not.
I don't see what you just said, so.
Yeah, I'm looking at draft 2, October 14th.
Here, you want a copy?
Yeah, that'd be great.
See if that's closer to what you're. I just brought a hard copy.
In light of the severe.
Resident only. Designated.
Yeah, yours is different.
Yeah.
So I don't know why.
Oh, that's the first draft,
Oh, is it?
yes. Cause I numbered them when I printed them out at
This is
home,
the one he sent on the 14th, 2 days ago.
okay.
Now, I may have made some edits before I sent
Okay,
it to
maybe.
you.
Okay,
My bad.
I've got,
You sent that to me.
I don't.
Is the,
here's the other one that I had thought I had gotten first. Just sent. That's the one he just sent. Okay, then I've got it backwards. Date them, please.
This one's dated on it's dated on the file, but I
Right,
guess not
but
on
when
the,
you print it out.
not in the
Okay,
text.
So this one is.
Okay,
one.
so.
Or-
In the future-
REV1, REV2.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay. All right,
So we want to strike them.
But is the intent of putting a letter in the paper?
What about it?
No, is the intent to say?
Yes, yes, so let's back up for a second. I'm sorry, I should have maybe gone way back at the beginning of this. I originally talked to the Webster Kirkwood Times. And I said to them, we have this new ordinance and I would like to see what do we have to do to get an article in the paper explaining this? And they said, we don't do it that way. They said, you write a letter to the editor. When you write a letter to the editor, if you have struck a nerve, we will know it with the letters that come back.
So is that we're trying to strike a nerve?
Well, we're trying to, we're telling the public, here's what we're working on. And if you have a response to that, let's have it. Then, if there is a response, then the Webster Kirkwood Times will assign a reporter to do an article on it, which is what we ultimately would like to have.
But only really if I mean. The article. Is it trying to gain support
No,
or is
no.
the article?
Let me explain. So at your last meeting, I saw 3 or 4 people, and where were they all from? Sylvester. All of them were from Sylvester. If the only people that hear about this are from Sylvester and the surrounding, guess what's gonna happen? We're gonna get slaughtered. This needs to come from the community at large. And the only way to get the message to all those citizens who have sons and daughters who go to the high school or who.
So I guess my point is for the letter, I would make it less. And say, you know, there was a discussions about equitable parking.
So that's
So
what,
wait just a minute, let me, and we've come up with a plan and we're presenting it to the city council. If city council takes it up and they'll have a public hearing. And that's the place to come and voice your opinion.
I don't disagree with that. But I also think that we need to generate a little bit of chatter out in the community over the dinner table or over the breakfast table about between moms and dads and kids and, you know, there needs to be some discussion of this if we're gonna have a shot at making this fly. And the only way I know to get that chatter is to get a letter in the newspaper so that it gets people's attention. That's just, I mean, that's my perspective. Right or wrong.
I think,
Go ahead.
I think a letter, can get some goodwill, that the committee's not acting on its own, but it's seeking, thoughts from the community.
And I agree with that.
So I think that's, I think, civil value.
And maybe making it clear, we don't have any power
Right.
to make any
Right,
of.
we're
these
making
decisions.
recommendations.
Yes, exactly.
We're making a recommendation to make the streets
Safer.
safer and
And
equitable
equitable.
for all.
That's
And that's basically it.
the big message.
And keep the misinformation that we've already encountered, like, it's gonna be on every street, nobody's gonna be able to.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We want to kill some of that misinformation that's out there.
But I don't know if this will really,
Yeah, I don't think.
this won't do it.
Isn't it for that?
Well, but it'll get the conversation
A little
started.
stamp.
And ultimately, if we're successful, we'll get an article in the paper that will explain all those details. I'm just trying to follow the procedure that the Webster Kirkwood Times told me, this is the way it works.
But I think that, so I think back to the pool, so city council met about the pool, and then after that meeting, that was, you know, when the two presentations happened. That next Friday, there was an article in the paper, so it was not solicited, I think it was just reporting on an item that was in city council agenda. That had community-wide interest,
Okay,
so I think,
Do you think this will gather community-wide interest? I mean, at this point, then we're just hoping that it gets covered.
well, yeah, I would think that we would do, I mean, we would make reasonable efforts to get the word out. That's kind of my objective. If you don't think that's,
no, I think the letter's fine. I'm just saying both will happen, so I think that,
yeah,
I think that the paper will cover it, because if the council gives it an hour at the work session, half hour, which they will, I mean, they're gonna have to hear it, you know, if they have questions. And if there's reporters that come to those meetings, I don't know, like, I mean, I expect that, and then I expect citizens to write letters to the editor too. Well,
And I agree, and I do think the only people that will really care about it are people that have ordinance right now that are thinking it might go away. That's just my thought. No one likes
Which is
to.
why Chris is saying we need to reach all those people who will be impacted that aren't
right.
living on streets with an ordinance.
But they might have kids at the high school.
Right.
In my heart of hearts, I believe that there are households out there 5 miles from downtown Webster who have children in the high school and mom and dad both work and they desperately want to get their child to school because neither one of them can drive him or her. I mean, there are families like that. And but they don't want to send their child to drive the car and then have to walk a half a mile.
Well, I'm glad you took that part out because the first one was
Yeah.
a quarter of a mile. Oh my God, Junior might have to walk a quarter of a mile. I was like, I want you to. That was me, that was it. Just
I get it.
What I find entertaining too is parents who show up in the middle of the day either to retrieve a car or drop off a car. blocks from the school.
Oh.
So it's like car sharing. But it's just so bizarre, you know, I see mom out there at the car, you know, that the kids dropped off.
Okay,
So as far as families knowing and being aware, yeah.
Well,
think about that.
yeah.
No, I'm fine, and I think it should come from all of us, it shouldn't just come from.
Yeah, this is something that came up, by the way, in the conversation with David Franklin. We talked about, is it better to come from me personally, or is it better to come from the commission? And I do agree that this should come from the commission. Although I'm happy to take the arrows, you can say, from the commission, send arrows to.
No, I think,
I just think there's some parts of this that really take a little time to sit down and study it. And when you throw something out there, people read the headline and they just start off without knowing. And what I don't want is people calling the city, you know, what is going on, what are, you know, and it just creating more of that.
And you
chaos.
may be absolutely right, but I'm willing to take a shot.
Did you write your own headline? Because if you.
Yeah,
course I
they
did.
know, they write,
They write your own headline.
they write
Otherwise,
their
who knows what
headline.
they'll put.
Oh, they write the headline.
even if you write one, they might change it.
Yeah, actually, the guy I spoke with said,
No, you
that.
gotta-
He said, we'll use your headline if it's short,
I,
but if it's long, we'll make one for you.
oh, there we go.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So Susan, we've been talking over your efforts here.
No, I'm taking it all in.
I trust that draft was going in the right direction, and if Susan wants to edit it and send it out,
I have a couple
and
quick
but question,
Okay.
would be great.
Webster Groves residents may request this ordinance. I think we should add that the city council request to the city council that this ordinance be.
Okay, so you have just asked a really, really big question that came up in our conversation with David Franklin. We actually, Clark and I actually had two different visions of this workflow. And I sent it out. I sent out a one pager that explained the two, but just to clarify. And I'm gonna see if I can describe what you said, Clark. Clark said, once the city council approves this ordinance. That the request should come here. We confirm that the facts are correct and that the new ordinance applies, and then we call this guy. And they enforce, or they put it in place. My understanding, we just saw this differently. My understanding was, we go through the same process, we read it, we say, yes, the facts are correct, it applies in this thing. We then send it to the city council, and the city council formally approves it. Because after all, my understanding from day one is that we don't do anything but make recommendations to the city council. That's my understanding.
Are you talking about the policy itself or requests that come in?
Requests,
Okay.
requests that
So,
come in.
I don't remember the council ever approving anything when we weighed in on parking.
Or stop signs,
Restrictions
if
or
there's a
stop
stop sign
sign.
ordinance.
No, once an ordinance is in place,
Correct.
you know, the council is out of the picture.
Okay, you were dead right then. Okay,
Once the ordinance is in place, all you would do is weigh in and say, yes, it meets the requirements for an ordinance, and then we'd reach out to Public Works.
okay,
And if you agree to say, yes, we need to put a stop sign there or put a parking sign there or whatever, and then we just reach out to Public Works and then we put the stop sign in or what.
got it.
Or if you
So-
deny it, then we say, no, it's doesn't
Yeah.
warrant it, and
So
then it's-
Clark,
Right, but if there's something outside of the scope,
Where we need an ordinance written.
Then we would have to go to
Then come
Well,
to the council for an ordinance.
Well, let me describe an example where this might be a problem. So maybe the request meets all of the criteria. But there is something going on about that request that's outside the realm of what we imagine. Maybe somebody has a deaf child. And because of that, they want a special circumstance. What do we do with that? Doesn't that go to the city council?
If there isn't an ordinance already in place but there are already ordinances in place or that for those types of.
For those
situations.
situations. All right, no, no,
I'd assume we just read a memo, maybe.
maybe,
This came before us and we don't have
Right,
we can't
Yeah.
fully address it.
because it's different.
but then that comes back to me and then we research the ordinances and that kind of stuff to see, because we have those in the
You don't
city
have it
already.
memorized?
No.
I've seen the book.
Oh, yes, no.
So Clark, thank you for pushing back, because I had a different picture in my mind. Thank you.
I just think, yeah, the council doesn't wanna, have to,
Had to sign off on all that.
Yeah.
they've already done it,
Right.
overarching
Got it.
Overarching,
guidelines.
that's where the ordinance is
Okay.
in place.
Okay, thank you.
But my other question along those lines was, what about the existing ordinances that are in place?
Right.
Well, I think I can respond to that. In my opinion, this in and of itself doesn't change anything. Everything as it is stays exactly as it is until someone comes forward with a request. And
Or,
then,
yeah, I
and
would
then,
agree with that.
and then we review it against the criteria. And if it meets the criteria, then whatever was in place before is null. And the new ordinance takes precedent. That's, I believe, the intent.
See, I think that's terribly convoluted.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I cannot see. I mean, so you're gonna say that any resident can overrule an existing ordinance?
No,
No.
Well, you
no.
got, well, yeah, because we just outlined that we've got existing ordinances on some streets that have restricted parking.
Right.
And I show up and I say, I want that to be shared parking. Yet there's an ordinance that designates that as what it is.
Well,
And so how does that get changed?
Correct, you can't do that.
No,
right.
well, so I've been picking through trying to understand ordinances. We wouldn't be, what we would be doing, I guess, so the new policy would say. No parking is appropriate here and no parking is, not appropriate here. So if someone came in, say with the Swan, then they'd say, please revisit our street. And my envisioning is
Okay.
by someone bringing this to TAC, that someone can be us. So we might say, hey,
Yeah,
as a group, we would like to investigate this 8-block area around the high school. And then we look at street by street, but let's say it was a Swan. We look at existing on Swan and there's parking lot on both sides, but our new policy says it's too narrow for that. So in that case, we could override that and
Bingo.
say,
but Carrie, our argument from the beginning is one inconsistency, and you pointed out all the different times, all the signs.
right,
And I think that should be taken off from the beginning.
I don't think we'll get it passed. That was
Then we
that's
go-
what staff
then
said
we
to
go
us.
to an
right
ordinance
away.
That expands no parking for high school students anywhere in Webster.
I
mean-
disagree.
I mean,
but let's clarify, because Captain Perks is saying we can't do that.
he said we can't just overrule existing ordinance.
Correct.
Exactly, we have another plan.
It wouldn't be overruling the existing ordinance.
I would think that would make sense, though, that a former ordinance that is now considered out of date.
They're not out of date,
Right, they're all in place.
they're all in place.
And I think that was why the city manager originally said, she couldn't support it
Okay.
because it wasn't addressing the existing.
Because we said we were gonna cancel them all out
Correct.
upon signature, and she said we can't just do that.
You can't do that.
So
You
here,
can't just sunset
Okay.
all the ordinances and
Okay.
have everyone in place.
I've been picking my way through the ordinance. So there is an ordinance that basically says all of the places in Schedule H are restricted parking. So in my estimation, I guess, we would have to get clarification on this. We go to Schedule H and take this location off or put this location on. It's just parking shall be restricted in these locations, and then Schedule H is just a
Oh.
list of street segments.
So we could,
The ordinance is there, and then it just says refer here for where these parking restrictions exist.
okay, so we have a way to do it. We just take that street out of
Out,
section H.
yeah, or add it back in.
Okay,
I would think the city attorney should rule on that.
I think we have to ask that question as
Right,
well.
and before we assume that doesn't happen.
But what do they do right now if someone comes to them and says, I don't want parking on my street? They just add that street to Schedule H. So, it's already being adjusted on a flexible basis, it's a
Wait.
living document.
But it's only going one direction,
I don't know, I don't know that for sure.
Captain First,
Oh.
35 years.
would it be appropriate for us, Carrie and myself maybe, to make an appointment with the city attorney and discuss this? Because I don't want to take this in front of the city council only to find out that we can't do it.
Let me dig into that and see how we want to go about
He's
it.
gonna bill you guys.
Oh, he'll bill,
He'll-
I mean,
He'll bill
he
you,
works on the hour.
he works on the hour and. he works for the city of West Virginia.
Sustainability. They have the money.
No, we definitely don't need a new ordinance.
Okay. That's what the letters said.
We don't need a new ordinance. The ordinance is written, it just says, in these locations, parking is restricted. And then it lists in a different
then it lists
place,
some.
all the locations.
Okay.
My question though, and this is something we also need to get clarification on, is when it comes to shared resident parking. According to the code, everywhere we have shared resident parking, they should be using permits. And I don't know that they are. So, but that means if someone comes to us and says, we want resident parking. They should be in a permit zone, they should be getting permits and visitor permits and vehicle permits and,
But
what's that?
Clearly,
They
we
are.
They are, okay,
There are stickers and then there are hanging.
Hanging,
tags.
hanging, plaque, yep.
so are
They're
they,
numbered. I do believe that what you sent out said something about color coding, which they are not. Like that is cost ineffective. They are
yeah, and I,
numbered stickers, so the only on the hanging tags for visitors, when they're distributed, our records clerk will actually just write the address of where that hanging tag belongs, so somebody doesn't just take the hanging tag and
pass
go
it
park
around.
any place willy-nilly.
Do they,
But the stickers, and then the stickers are for,
do people have to renew them annually then?
only if they get a new vehicle.
Okay. So these are all things that are in that's what, I just put in there what the code
Right.
says. So it's already a living document. It's already not necessarily everything that's exactly to code, but yeah, we'll have to figure out if someone comes to us and says,
all right, so are you open to the idea of sitting down with the city?
I am, or maybe, I don't know if there's a staff person who knows the code, if the city attorney is something out of line, or,
Well, I think. this
council
is-
person, because I only know what I've tried to pick out of here.
This strikes me as a big enough issue that we really want to get the expert weigh in on whether what we're trying to do is appropriate.
I would suggest starting with David Frank,
Okay,
because what you're talking about here is amending the code. And getting things in and moved in and out of the code, which takes the council. You don't just get to remove things out of the
Well,
code
right.
willy-nilly.
Right.
I think we're leaving the ordinance alone, but we're changing the list of,
But those get,
schedule.
those get put in and out by the city clerk, which
Really?
gets put in and out by.
all right, all right. All right, so I take your point, so
Yep.
we'll talk to David. And then let him take it up the ladder, I guess, to, okay,
It's not like residents just call up and say, I want my street added to this list,
No,
and
no.
it just gets added to the list.
But
That's
to
not
that
how it-
point, I don't see how we could ever get this passed if we just wiped out parking restrictions across the whole city.
oh, I
We're
don't,
not- It's
No.
naming, I gave you the list of the streets.
Right.
Lockwood, East Swan, Sylvester, Carouge, Selma, Joy Mason.
My problem with that is now our policy is not fair and equitable to the city. It's no longer, it's just, we're just looking at this one small area. So now it dials it all the way back to, this is just for Webster Groves High School.
Well, part two is for the rest.
Yeah, but I don't, well, then what do you do for part two? We have to do the same thing again, wipe out all the parking?
Agreed here, because if you actually look at the code, there are parking restrictions on every street across the entire city by ordinance.
Yeah.
Well,
Not just
every
that.
single street.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
But I'm specific about
Wow.
ordinances that apply to keeping non-residents off of.
Now, but there are now you're talking about residency there, that is the significant areas right around what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the non-parking or parking on one side and that stuff, there are specific ordinances for
Right.
various other
Yeah.
places
Yeah.
throughout the
That
city.
this has nothing to do.
That,
Well, and unfortunately though,
but when you go talking about street lists and all that other stuff, what the blanketed ordinance you're talking about would apply to numerous other streets throughout the city.
My street
Where you
is
would
parking
have
on
to-
one side.
Yes, where you would have to wipe out all those ordinances throughout the city.
Yeah, and that's never been our intent.
right,
But
Yeah,
it's no
right.
blanketed thing, when you start talking about street lists and go into that, you would have to apply that to every.
We don't have to. It's only if it's brought to us as a concern.
As a
And we
new-
evaluate whether it's a concern.
right.
Yeah. Um,
But all
Okay,
those
okay, I
parking
understand what
restrictions,
you're saying, Steve.
all the parking restrictions around the high school are not using the resident only
Right,
parts of the code. They're just using no parking.
right.
or
So,
restricted hours.
yeah.
Right.
Is there any real difference between residents only and restricted hours? Those two signage?
Well,
yes.
Yes,
there is in the sense that
There's a permitting, I
Yes.
mean, are they both permitted?
No,
no,
Only
It's
the.
very confusing, not.
It is
getting
very
one of those
confusing.
Right.
areas. I've never given it any thought.
and there's some other streets that are in some of the business districts that are. Permitted differently for some business permits and some various things like that.
although technically that's all covered under, at least in the code, it's all covered under residential zones. Even though it's the congested districts are the shopping districts, but the code, the yellow parking zone and all of that is covered under.
I mean, there's a way through this.
residential
It's
zones.
just deciding whether you have to, if the original ordinance is that broad, then it would be replaced with something that's piecemeal, with different sections, and we're only repealing one piece of that. I mean, if we can't get at it, the piece that we're looking at, then the council's got to look at changing that so it can change. I mean, there's gotta be a way to do it. And it's
I agree. There has to be a way to do it.
Right.
And if we can get the city attorney to look at it, I think he can probably give us some coaching on how to do that.
But I think as far as repealing it, what we would be repealing is all parking restrictions.
No.
That's what, but I mean, that's what they're all on. They're not under a piece of the ordinance. They're under that piece of the ordinance, which is parking restrictions are allowed anywhere we say they are in Schedule H. And that's what they're all covered under around the high school, except for the few areas that are residential. So all that time restricted parking that's over there, all of that is that one line of code that set up the ordinance for restricted parking anywhere. It literally just says anywhere that this, I think it's the city engineer deems it to be. And it's listed here.
Wow,
Yeah, it's a one line ordinance that all of these fall under.
one size fits all.
I know. So here it is.
Well-
I can even read it. So stopping prohibited in specified places. And under that, it says no person may stop, stand, or park a vehicle in any place included in section Schedule H hereof, or in any of the following places. Except when necessary to avoid conflict, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a bunch of bullet points, which Captain Perks was mentioned earlier, like within 10 feet of a fire hydrant, within 10 feet of the driveway or the fire station. There's a bunch of those, but the one that specifically applies to all these places are at any place where official traffic signs have been erected prohibiting or limiting stopping, standing, and parking in accordance with ordinance directions. So it's basically parking is
Catch-all.
prohibited anywhere we put a sign that says
It's-
parking is prohibited. Said locations are all designated in Schedule H.
And are they, is it a long list of
Yes,
the
it is.
corner of Elm and
It's,
Wilson? and-
yes,
Wow,
page 54. I actually put all this stuff in here for myself. Like the very first one is on the west side of Albany Court from East Glendale to Oak Tree Drive. No parking anytime. So it's the street segment and then it's the regulation that's next to it. Yeah, so
okay,
there's like, I don't know, 20-30 pages of street segments.
But we're picking out 6 or 7 streets
Yeah,
to start with around high school.
yeah.
They need to make it
There's a-
clear that it's the high school we're talking about, not nearings.
I don't know, I still think we should look at them one at a time. Cause I think if we just blanket cancel all those streets out, then something that should be straightforward like Swan, where it's not wide enough for the parking that's allowed. And hopefully, potentially 80-90% of the residents would be like, yes, is gonna get held up from happening. by the 80-90% of the residents on Mason who don't want their restrictions to go away, even though our new policy would say you're too wide for restrictions. And those two entities are gonna fight, and we can't, we can't address one without the other because we've tied them together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I mean, that's just my opinion,
All right,
but that's what I'm worried about.
so we need to put this on the fast track if we're gonna make this happen by our deadline in November. We need to get this resolved by the city attorney. So
I don't think we do. I
I'm
think,
not willing to go forward this way.
no,
I think we wasted a year for you,
well, I think the first step
because
is
there will be no fairness.
we just get our policy passed. That's what we
But
need
if
to
don't-
do.
If it can't be applied, there's no fairness. We should, if we don't see an avenue towards fairness,
Is the policy
Well,
for
all we've done is
only,
push kids further out from the high school.
only for new?
No, we don't
request.
say that. Our policy, this is our parking policy and this is how we make determinations on parking requests. But it doesn't say existing parking requests or former parking requests. It just says this will be the policy we met our
use.
guidelines.
so are you suggesting that we're kicking the can down the road by just having by having the city council vote on this and say yes? And then we have to figure out how to work it out? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, that's
what you're saying.
What I'm saying, yeah.
I think,
That's why I think we need them to vote on two things simultaneously, and both have to pass for this to go forward.
I'm confused.
Both changing the old ordinances and putting.
Oh,
this
I
in
see.
place.
So
And if they
you,
don't pass, then we don't go forward and come up with
But-
something else.
but then won't this help us moving forward for new requests? I mean, if
All
nothing
they're gonna
else,
do
it
is
helps.
push students from school, and that is not what we.
No,
If I'm the only block that's consistent, if nobody else says, yeah, take away my restrictions, then those 30 cars in my block will be left to 9 cars, and the other 20 will have to go further out.
I'm so confused right now. I'm sorry.
So in other words, if none of the other streets with restrictions allow more students on the streets, the 30 on my street, that would be lessened to about 8 or 9. The other 20 would have to go find other places to park further from the school.
But I guess my point is, first of all, if we pass this, if anybody else further out on Swan comes to us and says, we want parking restrictions, we can say, sorry, you can only get them on one side or whatever. So it would help us moving forward. Like the two that we got recently on Oakwood, they came to us and said, we want parking restrictions, and we would have said, sorry, your street is not applicable. You don't get your parking restrictions. So we just, which I think we kind of did anyway, but we have a transparent guideline for that. So I think moving forward, it would help us, but then we could raise the issue of looking backwards. As a group, we could say, we wanna look at this area and
But none of them are say, yes, okay, in my block.
I don't think, I'm not sure we have to. I think if your block is not applicable for current, it doesn't, the new policy does not apply to your block, then we make that recommendation that that block be changed. Now, we probably might hear from residents who are upset about it.
Right.
But
we're still citizens and we have
Right.
a right to do that.
and we actually don't have to have the 30% resident thing doesn't really apply to those. It applies to resident permit parking. So I think we could just make that determination that it doesn't meet the adopted parking policy. So we recommend that those parking restrictions be changed. Now, do we have the power, once we make the recommendation?
Can I have a timeout for a moment?
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable because we're over time now,
Oh.
about 15 minutes. So how can we resolve this now? Or what do we need to look into to know that we're safe to go forward with our proposal?
We probably shouldn't put a letter in the paper.
I'm thinking that too.
I agree. Until we know that we can make this happen. You feel pretty confident.
I feel like we're putting a policy in place that will still be effective for the future. For every new request that comes in, we'll easily be able to very transparently say yes or no.
And I think the big question is, how do we apply it to existing? conditions?
Retroactively.
And so what I hear you saying is we should move forward with this based on what we know today. And then at the same time, we should do some investigation into how best to apply it retroactively. Is
That would be
what
my
we're saying?
opinion, but I know Steve's. got other
So-
views, So,
Pushback, is that,
I know what you heard how strong the objection can be, so. I don't see,
well, is this important enough to see that we should talk to the city attorney? And have that, get that conversation, and then we can make an informed decision. Is that fair? Everybody comfortable with that? Okay, so let's see if we can talk to, do you want me to talk to David, or do you want to talk to David?
yeah, I'm okay. You're the chair. You should probably
All right,
reach out
I
to
will-
David, but
I
if you
will-
schedule, I'm happy to join a conversation.
Sure,
Schedule.
no, I would want you there. Okay, so arrange a meeting with David and see if we can get this resolved quickly.
And I would think it would be the three of you,
Oh, yes, of course, David too.
and I mean, it's Steve.
Oh, Steve too. Okay, yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, I will do that. All right. Can we move on? What else do we have?
More.
So I had made, again, notes from the last meeting that I watched on video. There were citizens that were talking about around Hickson, the woman who was sitting over by the door. What was the resolution on that? Was that,
She had a letter in the Webster Kirkland Times also,
she did?
after she came here.
Oh, she did?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Is that something that we need to address?
I think the city, I mean, there was an
It's a
incident.
construction site.
Yeah.
It's really sort of out of our
Okay,
purview, I think.
And I think the city's probably involved because of the incident that happened.
It sounded like.
Yeah,
all right. So we can
I don't think it.
We can take that off of our plate right now. Is that fair? Okay, great. And thank you for, I'm kind of rehashing stuff that was when I wasn't here, and forgive me for that, but I want to make
I'm
sure.
surprised you didn't dial in from Budapest.
I really should have. It was a different time of day. Paul, at that last meeting, there was a question about how to handle this was about all the signage. And South Elm was mentioned, Swan and Elm, no, that was the crosswalks. Remember that came up? Do not block driveway, do not block intersection.
Right.
And the question I think was, is that something that we deal with on an item by item basis, or do we need a overarching action item to cover that? You remember that
Cover what?
conversation?
To cover.
And
that
I think
request?
was talking about it. All these different issues about signage and traffic being blocked along Elm. People couldn't get out because the traffic was so busy on Elm that they couldn't get out.
I mean, that's sort of bundled in to the South Elm.
Yes,
I know we have our standard WTCD signage that we have, and then obviously anything that comes up either comes through request to police or us directly. Then we work together to figure out what goes.
well, so here's my issue. When something like this comes up in this forum, there was a lot of conversation about it. But then I didn't hear a conclusion. So what do I do with that?
Well, and I think that was Ann's email today saying, should this be treated separately or bundled into our
Okay,
South Elm?
Yeah.
I thought I remembered that the do not block driveway signs. That was just gonna be investigated, or do I remember?
I think, I mean, I put out there towards the end that question, do we want a bigger proposal or piece?
Okay,
And I don't think we voted on.
okay.
Right.
okay,
So that's.
Yeah, so that question is still on the table.
okay. Well, that's why I brought it up, because I didn't hear a conclusion.
Right.
So what do we think about that?
I think that should be on our November agenda.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, move to November.
Although I don't know if we have a meeting.
I was just gonna say.
We do. We do.
We do.
Can I add to that subject though,
Issue.
because I've applied to Ann
Signage.
recalling the traffic on Marshall, especially east of Point. So that's been narrowed from the 28.5 foot road to 2 driving lanes and parking lane. And I don't know when that change happened, but sometime not that long ago. And I think it's treacherous driving on that stretch. And so I went over there with my truck, and when you're in the narrow lane up against the curb and you try making a right turn onto Margaret or into a driveway, it's impossible to do without going into the traffic that's in the other way. So my view of that, so I measured that street is 28.5 feet wide. Elm at Swan is 31 feet plus or minus. So my concern is, on that busier street, if we narrow those lanes like they are on Marshall, I mean, I'd encourage you to go test drive that on Marshall, try making the right turn, going eastbound into a driveway or onto Margaret from that 10.5 foot wide lane that there's room for, and you can't do it. With longer than average vehicle. I mean, I don't know there was opinion on that, but I have a worry for that narrowing down the same way. So.
But just anecdotally about the do not block the intersection, I mean, I battle that
Yeah.
crossing Elm every day. My wife said, why don't you go up to the light?
During the rush hour, when the traffic is,
Usually, but so the day after our meeting. I pull up Cedar to Elm and there's a big truck right there. And I gave him a little toot because there was room in front to pull up. And he rolls his window down and yells, F off. And he just screamed right in my face. And he's just totally blocking that great intersection.
Well, then.
but what am I hearing?
So for discussion down the line, I mean, I think that's, if we're looking at the bigger picture, I just wanted to add that.
So this is for the November.
Yeah, to
Okay.
encourage you to go drive Marshall and see how that feels.
Drive
Two
Marshall.
lanes and parking. It's about 2 foot narrower than,
Newly striped.
Speeds,
no.
okay,
I think it's a 30.
okay. Cause where are you doing the speed limit or less?
Well, again, trying to make a right turn. Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's fair.
Marshall, 25.
I think Marshall's like either 30 or 25. I think
25.
it's 25 during the school zone, so it has the flashers on it.
I'm trying to move ahead because
Yeah.
we're running out of
Yeah, I think
time.
it's 20.
We've already run out of
25 the
time.
whole way.
So somebody in that,
Yeah, it's 25 the whole way.
toward the end of that video, I noted, public needs to know status of issues that come up.
That's what the thing I'm gonna do.
That's
Spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet.
Oh, got it.
We'll have a
Got
form
it.
letter like
Got it.
everybody else.
Okay.
Your business is important to us.
What was that?
Your business is important to us.
Last thing, signage about northbound Elm off US 40. This woman was talking about something about getting off the highway. And I thought she said onto Elm.
Well, she was saying that there weren't right turn only,
But there's two.
but there are two,
That
and that
was
was
me.
pointed out, right?
Yeah,
That they
Oh,
were.
that was you?
Yeah.
Oh, that was you. Okay,
And it's
so,
still, I ran into it today. Somebody coming here, I was coming from
Yeah.
somewhere else and
They do.
Do it all the
it's
time.
just people don't see the signs.
oh, okay.
They know they're there. They know it's right turn only.
Yeah.
Okay,
They just are going around traffic.
so Susan, is there more we need to do with that?
Apparently, there's nothing
Nothing to do.
to do.
Okay.
Like I could probably put a sign that's far up and like.
It says, please read signs.
Yeah.
it's the same thing you can do right here on Elm when people coming southbound, that right turn is
Yeah,
right
I
turn
know.
only and people.
And they do it all the time.
Do it all the time, and then they cut over right into the intersection.
Okay. So,
User error.
So, Big Bend, but that, Big Bend at Elm, that's the intersection that it's approaching. Could Webster add additional like approaching right turn only arrows on the pavement next time it's driving? Striping.
They applying for a grant for that also, that intersection,
Big
Big Bend and Elm,
gonna turn it into
That's
a
the
rotary.
county's- That's the county.
I
right?
mean, it does
So,
come up on you really.
Webster
quickly.
can't.
Yeah, but I thought there was a
They can-
county project there.
You said something about 44.
The only county
Months
project
ago.
I know that they're doing is they're
Okay.
doing resurfacing in Old Orchard. So I think to the police station to Kirkham, I think.
They will be doing Big Bend, but not for a couple of years. but yeah, they might be playing for a grant.
What about 44th Street?
I just thought I remember. We had commented about when you're going westbound and 44 and get off to northbound Elm. And you're looking back as the traffic coming. And I think I remember you saying that. I don't know what kind of, that's an interstate, but who's looking at that intersection?
Well, anything at 44, that's MoDOT.
That's all.
Yeah,
That's all MoDOT.
Yeah, and I thought that was.
They control the lights, the whole that's everything is MoDOT.
I think you do the vegetation for the.
Yeah, they control the vegetation, but
That's
or we do the vegetation there, but they control the intersection,
Yeah.
the lighting, the
Signage, everything.
signage, everything.
Okay, can I step back for a moment? When we got sidetracked on the issue of the, with the city attorney. Susan, you were trying to take us through the things that you wanted to clarify or,
Well, I think since we're gonna wait, we can wait till next time,
okay,
or was that? the
well,
decision
so here's
made
the
on
problem.
letter?
If we don't get the letter out there fairly quickly, it will not be in front of people before we make our presentation in November.
Okay.
So that's why I'm concerned.
Just there's so many unanswered questions that if we put this letter out there and people start asking specifics, I don't
We
think
won't be
have.
able to answer them.
I don't think we have all the answers. How's this gonna affect my, how's this gonna affect my street that already has a ordinance? How would you answer that? Those are the people that are really gonna be most
Okay,
concerned about it. I just worry about putting a letter out and stirring more stuff out at this point,
all right,
when we're not crystal clear of our direction.
all right, that's what I wanted to hear.
But thank you for your work on this.
Oh,
Yes.
what else have I got to do?
Good job.
Do I have?
We're impressed you watched the video twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Why?
the best part.
I kind of feel responsible. Imagine that. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you for your patience.